Matt Brown with another IoT hacking video. In our video today, we are going to take another look at this Polycom conference phone. This is the SoundStation 6000 that I pulled out of e-waste, and today we're actually going to be jumping into the hardware and attempting to extract the firmware off of a flash chip that we've located on this device. If you haven't seen the first video in this series, be sure to check that out. But without further ado, let's go over to the bench and take a look at what we got there. So already took this apart. Nothing inside of here. It's all over there. Let's swap over to that view. So first of all, just a high level view of what we got going on here. These are all the guts from the phone, and we got a couple notable components, right? So this is already, I look at this and I immediately know that this is probably going to be some kind of a Linux-based, like a heavy OS system as opposed to a microcontroller. Why do I say that? Well, because I can see there's a CPU. This is your RAM chips, your memory, and this is your storage. So this flash chip is what we are going to attempt to dump today. We'll have a closer look at this under the microscope. Other hardware hacking items. I looked briefly at the signals coming off of all these pins. There's a pin header. It's kind of hard to see in this camera. There is a pin header there. I could not find any kind of UART, like serial terminal, anything there. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist somewhere else, but I couldn't find that. So our main goal today is going to be to extract that firmware off of this flash chip. This flash chip, which now we will switch over to our microscope view. Let's get that into view here. So this is a 56-pin flash chip. So if you have one of the older XGecu universal programmers, it's not going to support this chip. So you need the new T56. The T56 is named because it can handle, among other things, this package of chip. And so I've got my reader on the bench, but first what we need to do is we need to desolder this from the board with our hot air. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to throw down some flux. So just going to throw that down generously along the sides there. And then I'm going to fire up my hot air here, and I am going to locate some tweezers that I will use, which I'm going to have to stretch out. So this is a really wide chip. All right. So again, first just kind of moving the hot air around to generally heat up the whole circuit board, but then I'm going to really just kind of punch that hot air right at the center of this chip, occasionally going and trying to quickly heat up the sides of the legs on the sides, but I want this to come off all at one time, so really just hitting it with a lot of heat, and we will be patient and not try to rip this off the board, because I do want to reattach this after I do firmware extraction. So the goal of this video is to get firmware off for analysis and then try to find some vulns from that data that we find. Finally, we got it. All right. So now I'm going to take this circuit board, kind of move it a little bit off to the side, and we will recenter on that chip that we've just pulled off. So that looks great. Just takes a little bit more patience on those bigger chips. They definitely have a little bit more thermal mass, harder for the temperature to change. And I definitely need to just let this cool off a little bit before I, yeah, I can still see it's still got smoke coming off of it. All right, I'll just clean this residue. So yeah, I've got tons of flux residue, which just looks super appetizing. We're gonna clean up some of that. I can clean it all up now, but I am waiting for this chip to cool down. You don't want to boil the isopropyl alcohol on this chip when it's too hot. So usually like to wait a little bit, let it cool down before I start cleaning it off. So yeah, just using 99% isopropyl alcohol here and some Q-tips. And all right, let's try to start cleaning this off. Yeah, we got just a bunch of flux residue on there that we don't want to have all that gunk get on our chip reader. So just going to do multiple passes. It is hard to clean underneath these legs because the hairs from the Q-tips will get like stuck. Make sure this is in frame for you guys to see. But it's kind of unavoidable. All right, I'm going to flip this over and get the other side. All right, get our chip back centered. Right. Yeah, I just have tons of flux residue because of the amount that I used there, but the amount was kind of necessary just because of how, again, how much thermal mass there is, how long it takes that chip to heat up all the way. All right, now I'm going to kind of go across the sides of these legs, and I'm going to do the other side. Just going to keep cleaning that top. Some of the residue on top of this chip, I think, is like from the sticker that I had to take off of it. So I'm just going to throw some more hot air, dissolve all that stuff, and get the back side of it. The chip is not 100% clean, but it's getting there. But we're going to have to do some more cleaning to it. So now what I'm going to do is there's still some solder that's probably left over on these legs of this flash chip. So we're going to go ahead and zoom in here. Make sure we have those all in view. And there we go, get that into focus. And so what I'm going to do now is we're going to use some solder braid to take the little bits of solder that are going to be still remaining on those legs. So now we're just going to use some of this solder braid and my soldering iron. It's already nice and hot. So we're going to take this and just kind of run it along the top here. I like to try to put my iron right on top there. And there we can see it's giving off that smoke. Okay, and there I push those legs in, and so that's not good. Okay, don't want to do that, but we can fix that. We can get those legs back in the right place, but it's a good warning not to push too hard. Some more solder there. But yeah, as you see the solder braid, it starts to discolor, and that's how you know you're doing a good job of taking the solder off of there. All right, try to do this without burning myself. That's always a good idea. Almost. Come on. There we go. Okay, that's pretty clean. So yeah, we definitely need to repair the legs there. That was a rookie mistake. But some rookie mistakes you can't go back from when you're doing this hardware hacking stuff. But that is one that we can fix. Just but we'll come back to that. All right. First, we're gonna take the solder off of this other side. All right. There we go. And you can kind of see that sizzling going on. I'm trying to hold it tight enough and not burn my hand because I'm holding like my finger on the other side of this chip, and this does heat this chip up decently. It gets hot. I have to let go every now and then, not burn my finger. Although that's kind of a rite of passage doing this work. Burnt my finger yesterday. You will burn your fingers sometimes doing this stuff. All right, so that's pretty good. There's still a little bit there. That's pretty good. Now you'll see it kind of like makes this look a little brownish. So there are some impurities in that solder braid. No matter what they tell you, they'll market it as like a no clean product, which means like allegedly you don't have to clean afterwards. That's obviously not true. So we're just gonna go like that, get all that that kind of brownish residue off of there. I'm gonna go over to the other side of the chip that we jacked up. There we go, looking good. Okay, so now this side. So we're gonna take our tweezers and we're just gonna bring these legs back out ever so carefully. Here, you can see all this stuff from my Q-tip. That's great. I don't care about that for right now. You can see how small this is. I can barely get my tweezers. These are some pretty small tweezers. Alright, let's try like this. Ooh, there we go. Don't gotta be perfect, but ooh, okay, we got it. Just gotta drop these buttons back down. Try not to break them off in the process. So a fun thing about doing this is that also, let's say you do break one of these off. You're doing this and you break a leg off of here. Most of these pins, if you look at the data sheet, will be not connected. If you're looking at a pinout diagram, it'll be labeled as like NC, not connected. So sometimes if you break one of these off, you will win the lottery at a decent probability. You will actually break something off that's not connected and doesn't actually matter, and the device will still function, and you'll still be able to do your firmware read. You'll still be able to reattach it just fine, and it won't be a problem. But that's obviously a gamble. So now we're going to take our socket here, which, okay, we're going to zoom out. And so I can't even fit this all into the microscope shot, but we're going to try the best we can to let you see what this socket looks like. Oh, I can. That's great. Okay. So I see a pin 1 indicator here, so I'm actually going to flip that up. and put it that way. And then on the chip, there's also a little circle, which is the pin 1 indicator on the chip. You can see that right here. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to push down on this chip reader terminal here. And we're going to get that all lined up. And we're going to drop it. And so this is why having a microscope is super useful for if you do bend a pin a little bit, you can zoom in here and you can check and make sure that it is seated just right in this reader. So we can actually go and visually inspect that these are not touching and that the pins are not crossing over, not touching each other. We're not like grounding anything out, shorting anything out. And that each of these pins is touching the proper place in the connector. And it is. And so just like that, we are ready to place this into our reader here. So now we've got that, and we've got our XGecu T56 reader, and there's another pin 1 indicator. It says right here, it's not coming in focus. That says 1 on it, and then also this reader says to have pin 1 be up top here. I'm gonna jam this in here. It never wants to fit in exactly. All right, there we go. And then we drop this little thing down, and when we drop this down, it locks all those pins in place. So now our chip is seated in our reader, and we are ready to go over to our desktop computer. Taking the gloves off. I highly recommend wearing gloves when you're doing this kind of work. All right, so we're at our computer. I've already pulled up the XGPro software, super sketchy Windows executable that is distributed by a company that I have never met before and I don't know. I run this all under Wine. I've shown in previous videos, and I'll leave the links in the description of this video as well. There's a really cool GitHub project where they provide a driver to work with this device, the XGecu T56 Universal Programmer. It can run under Wine, and it provides the USB driver so that it works on Linux in Wine. So what do we do with this software when we pull it up? So the first thing that I do, this is a step that I actually do before I ever pull a chip off the board. So on that chip, you could see that there was like the chip's identification number, its part number, printed on the chip. And so the first thing I do before I do any of this is, before I pull a chip off a board, I want to know that my reader is capable of reading it. So I punched in that number here into this software, and it came up with 2 manufacturers actually with the same exact chip number. I'm guessing like one company bought the other one or something like that. That's not too uncommon in this space, but mine was specifically labeled as Spansion, and so we're going to select this right here. It's confirming that it says here at TSOP56. That is the chip package type. So package just means the physical characteristics of the chip, how many pins there are, the dimensions of the chip. Oftentimes companies will make a flash chip that internally is the same exact chip, but it has all sorts of different configurations, different number of pins that it will connect up to a circuit board with. And so here there's only one choice, but for other systems, for other chips, you need to pay attention to this. So we've selected the chip. We're going to go down here. The config doesn't have anything weird. So this is not NAND flash, or it might be NAND flash. It's not a flash chip that supports like spare area, and so sometimes when you're pulling firmware and you want to extract like file systems and stuff like that out of it, you're going to want to go into this config section and tell it to not extract or not include the spare area. But that is not an issue for us, and so we are going to go ahead and go to device. We're going to go to read, And oh, this does have like an OTP, a one-time programmable area on the chip too, so it'll read that off. Whether or not it's actually being used is another question. We're gonna hit read, and we have a pin detect error. Okay, was not planning on this. All right, so it says 3, it can't detect 3 pins. All right, so what I do when this happens, a couple things. So first, we're gonna wiggle around. I'm gonna try to reseat. I should show you what I'm doing over here. Okay, so the first thing I do is I take it back out and I try to reseat this, because maybe, I don't know, maybe it had a problem when I was going in there. And so I want to do that. Okay, there we go. And back to the software. I'm going to hit read again. Still have a pin detect. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the microscope. So yeah, wasn't not planning on this, but I'm going to take this out of the reader because otherwise we can't see under the microscope. All right, here we go, back to the chip. So it's telling me that pin, maybe I know what the problem is. Hang on. We're going to put it back in. All right. Okay, number one. First of all, make sure we're doing this the right way. There we go. Okay. You're kidding me. Yeah, with the updated reader, it gets even harder to get all of these pins to line up with these things. All right, there we go. It's in. All right, we're back at the software. I'm gonna hit read again. Okay, we're getting the same error. It says bad pin on ISP, so that actually is telling me that this might, no, it's not doing ICSP port. Interesting. Flash device. Yep. I'm pretty sure I've got it the right way. I do. All right. Oh, you know what? This might actually require this extra cable. All right. Solving problems, doing it live here. Okay, let's see if this is what we want. Okay, so there is this cable here, which of course is not like, oh man. Oh, here we go. So this, I wonder if this chip needs to have this also plugged in. That might be the case. I've never had to do that before, but if that works, that's gonna be cool. Because it does mention that it also needs, oh, for those extra pins. I think that's why we need that cable. Hey, look at that. Solving problems, middle of the video. Read succeeded. Awesome. All right. So we go back. So we're gonna go look over here at the flash area. This looks awesome. Okay, looks like we got like real data that got read here. So we're gonna hit save, and I'm going to save this call it, you know, polycom.bin. Okay, our file has been saved. Look at this, doing things live. All right, so we've got our firmware file here, polycom.bin. And the first thing we're gonna do, we're just gonna do bin walk. We're not even gonna do any of the extraction options. I just wanna see what it looks like. Holy crap, tons of PIM certificates. Very interesting stuff. Like it's almost like that's all it's seeing in here. Alrighty. I don't even know if it identified a single file system. This may be a few videos. We may be doing a few videos on firmware analysis if this doesn't really turn out. Okay, we got absolutely no file systems here. What are these things that it pulled out? XML documents. Well, what is this XML document here that we see? Well, that answers that question that we had before. So now I'm going to have to do some video editing, and this is going to get blurred out here. The reason why it's going to get blurred out is you can see here that there is a, I'll try not to blur this part out for you when I'm editing the video. It says device.net .1x. So if you remember from the previous video, we said that there were 802.1x credentials, that protocol where if you're in a corporate environment, you plug in to an Ethernet jack in the wall, you don't just get an IP and hop on a network, right? You have to authenticate to that network. That is the protocol, and these are the credentials for that protocol, right? So we can see here that there is an identity, this is the username, and then device.net, .1x, password. There's the password. So, since we pulled this out of e-waste from a specific place, I'm obviously going to censor this information, the sensitive information that we have here. But yeah, we found some creds to get onto a corporate network with. Not bad for the first file we opened up. I'm really confused why we don't see a file system. So this is probably going to turn into a couple videos of me just showing off camera other stuff that we could analyze. Yeah, but just like looking up through this output, it's definitely seeing, okay, so it's like seeing some certificates. That's interesting. Yeah, some like zlib data, other stuff. What was it? What was the other things that we wanted to look for? Yeah, like if we just go and then okay, so yeah, other thing I do. So if you're wondering like, what do I do with firmware? Like, what do these like IoT hackers do? Like, you want to know like the first thing I do when I find a firmware file? I do something like this. And I look at the strings, right? All right, so yeah, we got some kind of identifying information, very interesting. We're gonna go through these. So these are obviously like false positive strings. So real quick primer on the strings program. Strings, all it does is it looks through like a file for ASCII characters, right? So in this file, there's a mix, right? So actually what this file looks like, if we use a hex editor, is it looks like this. It has ASCII data, but interspersed in between that ASCII data. So when you're looking at this part, for instance, of this file, these are ASCII characters. It's trying to interpret what the text data of these raw bytes are inside the file. But you get to a part like this, and it just puts a dot. Well, when it puts a dot, I mean, it could be a real dot, but more than likely what it is it's saying this is not an ASCII character. I can't interpret this like as text, and so it just puts a dot, right? And so obviously mixed together, there is, you know, things that could be interpreted as text, but maybe it shouldn't be interpreted as text. So well, what the strings program does is it's going to say if there are X number of consecutive characters of bytes that can be interpreted as ASCII characters, well, then I'm going to print out that string, those characters, right? And so obviously some of these are false positives. You see, okay, like this. This is probably not intended to be a string. This is probably some kind of code, some kind of executable code or something like that. But, or just binary data, non-text-based data. But this would get flagged by the strings program because by default, the strings program, I believe it is the default is 4. And so the number, so if it sees 4 characters in a row that are ASCII, then it's going to print it out. And obviously you can use this N flag to change that, but I just kind of like if I want to have less false positives, I could like up this to 10. So let's do that. Okay, so we see a couple things. We see, you know, blah blah blah, some other information, a bunch of false positive stuff. Okay, here we go. Oh, very interesting. Okay, so these I recognize this stuff. These are log files, right? These log files, if you saw the previous video, were very similar to what we saw in that web interface, those application and boot logs. These actually look like the boot logs. So if we, okay, so here is a, here's a certificate. So these are probably like CA certificates for use in SSL, right? Very, very useful stuff. Wow, yeah, we're just a lot of certificates, right? And Binwalk identified that for us. It saw that there were just a ton of certificates in this firmware, which is true. Okay, we have another bit of a boot log. So if we slowly go down here, if you remember from our previous video, I kind of showed you a part of the boot log that was a censored version of it because it did have some sensitive data in there. So I just want to reduce how much editing I need to do in this video. Yeah, but we'll just kind of wrap it up there. So I'm definitely going to be needing to do another video on the firmware analysis of this device. It's not immediately clear, for example, where the executables are that are backing that web server, right? Because that's my goal. Like, I can get some sensitive data for this one device, but as a security researcher, what I'm more interested in is to find things in this firmware that I can then use to find vulnerabilities in any kind of like a network-based service, right? So that way I could apply that vulnerability to any device, not just the one that I have sitting on my desk, because obviously I already control that one. That's my device. So yeah, in the next video, we will dive even more into the firmware analysis step and maybe a little bit of vulnerability hunting. I want to thank everyone who has been watching my videos. Let me know if you enjoyed this one or what you want me to do next. Thanks. Have a good day.